is life? Are you life? Am I life? Is that one life?
Hey, how you going?
What is life? As most of you might know, life is important because it's what all of us are. We are life. What constitutes life? Is it consciousness specifically, as in the ability to be self-aware? Or is it a more scientific definition, such as being capable of performing certain actions like breathing, eating, sleeping, excreting, procreating, grooving, those kind of things. What constitutes life? Is that all really life means? Just being alive really is just all the biological actions that are a byproduct of life? Or is it more than that? Are we more than just what we do as beings? It's important that we define our terms on this one. So, do you believe that life is more the biological definition of how scientists see it, just being check marks in a box in order to define, yes, this is life? Or do you see it as something more? That more is what I would like to really discuss and point out in this video today. But before we do that, a word from our sponsor. First of all, if you'd rather skip this segment, this is the time code to skip it. Just jump forward. But if you're still here, I really appreciate you watching. I am my sponsor. I have been doing this for about 7 months now, mostly on TikTok, then more recently on here, on YouTube. And I just wanted to point out, I have an Etsy. I know I've mentioned it in the previous video, but I'm not sure how many people actually saw that. It is not just a normal Etsy. I do sell keychains, like normal keychains there, but I also sell what I call dragon pendants. Here's some images on screen. These are more than just keychains to me and to a few other people in my life. They have their own personalities, their own quirks and differences that I think make them very special. They have their own descriptions on the Etsy where you can read about each of them and learn if they have a personality type that you either find interesting, funny, or fun to look at, or think about. So if you're interested in picking up anything from the Etsy, go ahead. It would be really appreciated and I'd love to see it. Thank you. Back to our regularly scheduled content. Now, once you've made your decision between those two camps, I want to explain the side of life being more than just biological systems that define it. I believe that in every person there is a journey towards their perceived version of happiness. Like most people, I think the goal of life is to achieve happiness in whatever way you see that, whether that be a religious sense, a more worldly sense, or more of a literal materialistic sense. Now, I have come up with an analogy that I think works really well, specifically in the context of this video, to explain how I see the journey to happiness. So, I want you to think of the water cycle. The cycle of how water starts out as however it started out, evaporates into the atmosphere, turns into rain, and then falls as rain onto wherever it goes, right? That rain is, each individual drop is how I see humanity.
Sir, I think you're gonna want to see this.
Holy shit, kid.
This might be the evidence we needed. Now, can you zoom in?
Yes, sir. I believe I can.
Now, can you enhance?
Yes, sir. I can do that.
Jesus H. Christ.
Now, for those of you who are probably kind of confused, if you've seen my previous video, you know that I was talking about lines in the previous video, and I said I'd be talking about lines here. We're still talking about lines. I need to set up this beginning portion so it makes more sense. But, if you haven't seen the previous video, go check it out. Also, check out my Etsy. Anyway, right? It falls down, lands on the top of whatever mountain it is, and then takes the path of least resistance down towards whatever body of water it's aiming for. I see that large body of water as the end goal of happiness, right? Now think of how a river flows. It takes the path of least resistance. Water tends to follow gravity in order to find the path that has the fewest obstacles. I think humanity or people do something very similar in their lives. So, when each person makes a decision in their life, they're dictating or controlling the direction in which they flow, right? They'll start at the top of the mountain and try to get down the mountain to the bottom. The easiest way that I've found to explain it, each individual person will make small decisions in their life in order to move forward and change how they exist. If you think about an ecosystem is a group of biological creatures who work together or inadvertently work together in a physical space in order to create an overall dynamic in which they exist. Each individual creature in the system has their own job.
What can I get for you today, sir? What will it be?
That they fulfill whether or not they believe or understand that they're fulfilling a niche or a job, right? Each individual thing will go forward in their lives and make small decisions that will change the flow of the body as a whole around them, right? This is an important aspect of what I'm trying to describe here. So if we continue to consider the water analogy, people are like water. They'll flow in the direction that they perceive as the path of least resistance in order to make it to happiness. The rocks and mountain around them are the obstacles in their lives, preventing them from making it to their end goal. And the decisions that you make in your life are the direction that flow takes you towards your end goal of happiness. Each individual action that you do will change the direction that you're going in order to take you to that end goal. Those actions can be as simple as just a shift in how you perceive your surroundings, or as simple as changing what your end goal is. The point that I'm getting at is that small decisions in your life can change your life dramatically and in great ways. Take, for instance, the way you treat others, or the way you treat yourself, or how much sleep you get, or what foods you eat, when you sleep,
Hole-in-one!
how you sleep. Things of that nature have a real tendency to change your perspective on how you see the world. Take, for instance, if you're dehydrated, it can be very easy to see the world around you in a very negative way, even though the only major difference is that your water intake was a bit low that day. It doesn't seem like something that small could change how you perceive the world, but it happens to me time and time again, where I forget to drink water, and I'm annoyed at the end of the day, and I don't know why. All I need to do is drink some water, and I'll feel better. Or sleeping, or eating. Now, while you ponder that, I also want to introduce the idea of Sonder to you. For those of you who don't know, Sonder is the realization that every single passerby around you, anybody that you don't know, has a life as vivid and complex as your own. Meaning that you could be the background character sipping coffee and not realize that you'll never really see that person again, and you won't know them and they will never know you. It's a wild concept to sit down and consider while you're sitting there, just being and seeing all of these people around you who have no clue who you are, and vice versa. And then when you go back a few minutes ago, when you consider how small actions can dictate how your life goes, now consider how each individual person also has, in part, control over how you perceive your world. Even like a slight compliment from somebody who you don't know, at least for me, can make my day for a few days sometimes, depending on what it is. And seeing that little actions from people around you can also dictate how you perceive yourself and perceive your life. It is a lot easier to understand when your family, friends, and loved ones do something similar, because their actions and thoughts have a lot more sway over your psyche as a whole. But even people you don't know can have a small effect on you as a person. Consider the butterfly effect. For those of you who don't know, that's if you go back in time, it's theorized that if you use a time machine to reverse time and do little small actions, those small actions can change things over the course of an extended period of time, to the point where one small action now can lead to a completely different future later on. And it's something kind of like that, where little things build up over time to lead you to specific conclusions that you wouldn't have made otherwise. And it is even more wildly apparent, this concept, whenever you look at people who you don't have much in common with. Things like different ethnic groups, people who grew up without family, people who grew up without a father figure, people who grew up without a mother in their lives, people who had two fathers or two mothers. Those kinds of people don't have the same perspective that you do on life. So whenever someone comes to you and starts explaining their worldviews, it can be a very enlightening experience seeing them for the first time, in seeing their worldview for the first time, in completely changes how you see the world. And then it gets even more intense and insane when you consider that your actions dictate other people's lives, which change how they see their world. And whenever you change that, that changes them. Then they change a little bit, and that changes somebody else. And then it just cascades and flows out into the world. And that then changes in itself. And it's just this absurd, chaotic flow of life that I feel, in part, is what I see whenever I think about this line art that I've been talking about in the past video. It is a much more physical aspect of this worldview, but it's that vast feeling of incapability and insanity that comes from thinking about Sonder and its implications is partially the feeling that I get from watching and looking at this line art that I've been talking about in the past and now. It's kind of difficult to explain, but you can see individual parts of this line art, right? You can see where the line goes and you can see where it stops. But looking at the entire thing as a whole and understanding it all at once isn't possible, right? And it relates back to what I was talking about with Sonder. You can see individual parts and you can see yourself in that aspect, but looking at it all as a whole is impossible, and that lines up in some ways, right? That is the same feeling I get when looking at this line art. And that is the main goal of this portion of this video. But it's not the last part. There's still one more aspect that I want to include in this series that we're going to be talking about in the next episode. And I think another aspect of life that is not very well looked at, or at least not very well examined is systems. Systems are also an aspect of life that I don't feel gets talked about a lot. For obvious reasons, it's not really that big of a deal, but I feel like it's worth examining. Systems are ever-present and very important to life because they allow us to understand life better. And I think it's something that we need to discuss, and it's something that I'm going to discuss in the next video. So if you're interested in seeing any more, go ahead, like, follow, comment, check out my TikTok, check out my Etsy, do all the stuff and the things. Have a good day, everyone. Bye!